because people become so productive within servant leadership. We had record new bookings, new orders from customers that exceeded over $200 million dollars in business. And I think that year in revenue, we did almost $180 million dollars in revenue with record profits and cash, etc. And the neat
Hello and welcome back to ModernServantLeader.com. I'm Ben Lichtenwallner and I'm here today with Art Barter, owner and chairman of Datron World Communications and founder and CEO of the Servant Leadership Institute. Art purchased Datron in 2004 from Titan Corporation. He knew he could make the organization better through better management practices and in particular the application of servant leadership principles. He was very successful in doing so, and through his work both through Datron and through Servant Leadership Institute, many more organizations are learning about servant leadership today and the business success and personal benefits that it brings to the organization. Thank you, Art, so much for joining us today.
Look forward to having a nice conversation with you today.
Great. Thanks, Art. So, Art, for anybody in the audience who's not familiar with it, can you give us a little bit of background about Datron and the days when Titan owned them towards the end and when you acquired it, and about how servant leadership played into that too?
Sure. We acquired Datron in November of 2004. And prior to that, the entire year, we were a part of Titan. Titan was up for sale at the time. And there was a company who was trying to acquire Titan and got some due diligence review. And we were in the middle of an investigation with the Department of Justice for potential violation of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which basically just means that we bribed a foreign official to get business or retain business in the international marketplace. Well, we went through a very extensive investigation with the Department of Justice. And after several months, they found out that we didn't do anything. And one night we were talking to one of the folks that worked the due diligence and found out that the real reason for the investigation was that the acquiring company found a weakness in Titan that they wanted to exploit, and they wanted to use this to get a better price for the deal. And my company at the time, the division, we had about 70 people. And to me, that was a message that both companies just wanted to basically not worry about 70 people and their families' lives to get a better price for the deal in the acquisition. And that's the power. That's the old power model. You use the people to your benefit, and then when you don't need them, you don't need them anymore. And Titan had a great reputation in the marketplace, but had a difficult time in really handling their employees correctly when they got into difficult times. They did great when it was going great, but a little difficult in difficult times. They weren't a servant-led organization. And we were able to survive that year because we sat down with the employees. We told them everything that was going on. We asked people to stay focused on their jobs. And I believe we continued, even with that on our backs as a burden, we continued to move towards working to be a successful company. And we decided to acquire it at the end of that investigation, really based because we believed in the company, we believed in the people, and we wanted a chance to go manage the company in a different way. And so we made the commitment that if we had a chance to buy the company, we were going to work on implementing servant leadership throughout the entire organization. And that's what we're able to do.
Wow. That's fantastic. And it was really successful, as I
Before
understand.
actually cemented in the reasons for us to go into servant leadership.
Wow. That's fantastic. And if I recall correctly, it was very successful, right? I mean, the business has grown substantially since then, right? From 2004 to 2010, wasn't the profits like tenfold or something?
When we acquired the company, we were doing about $10 million in revenue, and we were losing money. And that was in November 2004. In our fiscal year 2000, and I think it was 10 or 11, we had record new bookings, new orders from customers that exceeded over $200 million in business. And I think that year in revenue, we did almost $180 million in revenue with record profits and cash, et cetera. And the neat part about it is we were able to obtain that growth without taking on any debt. We did it through internal growth, internal cash generation. And that's where servant leadership really pays back, in that you're really able to do more with less people, because people become so productive within servant leadership that you really can't put a limit on how much they can do. And that's what's so exciting about servant leadership, is to watch people perform and be happy at the same time about what they're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of the things I love about Datron and your success is, there are people who misunderstand servant leadership and they think it doesn't work in today's business world, and you're evidence that that's just not true. It's just not the reality of it. So
there are studies coming out right now that show that the average servant-led organization makes almost 10% more on a pre-tax basis than the average S&P 500.
Nice.
And those are the charts I love to show to CEOs who don't believe that servant leadership will work, or believe that servant leadership is too soft.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter what type of leadership you have in the company, you still need results. But when you can combine those results with servant leadership, you're going to get results that, for us, our pre-tax profit was averaged around 22 to 24% in that year that we had a record bookings. And I don't know of any CEO who wouldn't like to add another 10 points to its pre-tax profit.
Yeah, exactly. And you talked about the different types of leadership, and one of the questions I've been dying to ask you, because you went through a challenge recently, or opportunity or challenge of taking on a new CEO and president of Datron World Communications. And that's one of the greatest challenges I've heard for people is, hey, servant leadership works great, but how do you keep the momentum going? How do you make sure that the successor is also a servant leader, especially when you're faced with the challenge of finding someone from outside the organization, which, if I'm not mistaken, Datron, that's what you did, right?
Yeah, we did. Yep. It's an interesting task, because first you really have to make sure your values, your mission, your purpose are known. And as CEO, I spent a lot of my time just talking about those things to people, and mostly to not only to the existing organization, but also to new people who came on board, because there aren't very many companies out there who you would call the servant-led organizations. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we look at people, interview people for leadership capability first, especially when we're looking for a leadership role. And we look at their heart first, and we want to talk about servant leadership. We want to talk about how they handle people, what they would do in stressful situations, etc. And if they get past those interviews, then we bring them back and we start talking about competency. And are they competent to do the job? Will they survive? Can they do what we want them to do? And so those two have to go in sync. But the first thing we look for is leadership. And for me, in a leader, you really have to show your heart. And if you show your heart to other people, in other words, you're a nice private individual, nobody knows anything about you, that's the type of leader that we don't like to have here, because leaders have to be open, they have to be transparent, they have to be willing to share their weaknesses and their successes, and they have to show their people that they care. And in most cases, people won't feel you care unless you show them your heart. And so that's what we really focus on. I've got some guys that work for me now. They hold back their heart, and they've gone as far as they're going to go in this organization, because they won't show their heart, or they won't show enough of it. So when I looked for a new CEO, the guy that I eventually hired, I really wasn't out looking for a CEO at the time. The circumstances put me in a position to either decide to go full-time into servant leadership and run that organization, or stay within Datron World. And I decided to go into servant leadership full-time. But the gentleman that I brought on board, I'd been talking to for the last 3 years. He was a CEO of a competitor of ours, Codan, down in Australia. We had generated a relationship over 3 years. We became friends. We talked to each other all the time at trade shows, traded information. Just had a great relationship. And we met over Christmas last year to talk about a business, possibly going into business together in a certain market. And at the end of that conversation, I asked him, where does he want to go? What does he want to do? And that opened up the conversation of him possibly coming to work for us. So when you find somebody that has a heart, and then also find somebody that loves radios, like Kevin does, it's a win-win for everybody. And so you really have to be careful. The one thing I've learned, if you make a mistake, especially at this level, if you make a mistake, the damage can be great. And so you really want to take your time in the hiring and evaluation process. You don't want to rush through that. Do not hire someone that you think might make it, or you just kind of have a feeling they might. You really have to know them and really understand and know that they're going to be able to do it.
Nice. Well said. And just for anybody who's not familiar, Datron's primary product, of course, is radios, in case they were wondering why the love for radios came into play. But yeah, no, absolutely. Now, and you had all that tremendous success in the beginning. You've gone in, you've gotten a new CEO and president, but you also had some challenges recently. And I know that must have been a difficult time, as it is with any servant leader, when the time comes to make a decision that somebody has to be let go for any reason. And that's another great challenge for servant leaders is, how do you handle a situation like that when the business is down and you have to cut back? Can you talk a little bit about that time and how you handled it and what role servant leadership played in that?
Yeah, and let me tell you first how we used to do that in a power environment. When companies went through layoffs, you'd sit down, you evaluate everyone, and you figure out who was going to be on the list. And you'd plan your day, you'd go get people, you pull them into a room, you'd send them to HR, and within 30 minutes or 40 minutes, they're asked to leave the company. And in some companies, they'd be their computers would be turned off while they're in it with HR. They wouldn't be allowed to walk through their offices alone, etc. And what really was interesting to us was in that environment, the day before the layoff, we trusted them. The day of the layoff, we didn't trust them. We had to usher them out the door.
Yeah.
And so we changed the way we did that. We said, listen, these folks have earned the right to stay at the company the entire day if they want to. They've earned the right to say goodbye to their coworkers. They've earned the right to spend time finishing up their work if they want to finish up, pass it on to their bosses, whatever they want to do. If we start a layoff in the morning, they can stay here all day long. We didn't lock down their computers. We didn't, give them escorts. We didn't, we trusted them that day just as much as we'd trust them the day before. And I think that was the biggest difference in how a servant leader would handle that situation, because we still trusted the people. Mm-hmm. And that meant we had to act like we trusted the people and not act like we were paranoid as a management team. And the impact it had on the organization was amazing, because it not only helped the people who were leaving, but it also helped the people who were staying, because they got to talk to people. They got to hear about how it was handled. They got to hear about what the company offered them. They got to hear about all the benefits and stuff from the people impacted, not from management.
Yep.
And that had an impact on the organization as well. So, we love people regardless of what's going on in the business. People. And I think in our organization, yeah, it's tough to separate. It really is. But I will tell you, the last group that I met with on our last layoff was a group of about 14 people. Half of them worked on the floor. And when I excused myself and turned it over to HR, I had 4 people walk out of the conference room with me. They came over and gave me a hug and told me, Art, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be good with Datron, because we believe in it, and you're going to be okay. And if there's anything we can do, please call us. Now, they came to me and said that and gave me a hug as CEO. And I went, wow, this is amazing. You treat people with respect. You treat people with dignity. You show them that you care over a long time period and manage them. and they're willing to give back even when the times are tough with them, losing their job. So that's the biggest aspect. The second aspect that surprised us was our reputation in the community is pretty good as a servant-led organization. They know what our values are. They know the character of people we have. The people who worked at Datron, I think the record we had was we had one individual got a job outside in the outside world 2 days after they were laid off, because the company knew exactly what type of person they were getting. They knew the training they'd had in servant leadership. They knew the values that we held everybody to. They knew me. And they said, listen, I don't have to interview for all that stuff because I know the type of person that works at Datron. And so our folks got jobs faster than usual. And that was a big blessing and surprise, and that was really surprised us. Yeah.
Nice.
You got to communicate with people. You got to tell them you care. And above all, when business turns down and things get tough, we're in the defense business, and when the government gets tough, we get tough. They didn't do anything wrong to be put in that position, all right? And we as managers need to make sure that doesn't happen very often. That's our job, yeah.
Yep, well said, well said. And we kind of touched on it in the beginning, so we've seen the peaks and the valleys that Datron's been through under servant leadership. And what would you say to an executive at another organization who does debate the values of servant leadership? Because they could just as easily point to the downside, and say, well, there's this positive and that negative. And so for all the leaders out there who debate whether or not servant leadership is effective or valid today, or if they're saying it's just soft leadership, what do you say to those individuals?
There was a study that was done about a year and a half ago by Gallup that I use in presentations that shows how people feel about institutions in the United States today. Mm-hmm. Their confidence in institutions. And at the top of the list is the U.S. military, and then the police. In the middle of the list is about 30, I think it was 35% was the president, and at 13% was Congress. Hmm. Confidence level in those people that we elected to be our officials, we only had a 13% confidence level in, which is a leadership crisis. And if you look within our government today, we have a leadership crisis just about everywhere we turn, because people have forgotten who they serve. It isn't a full-time job. It isn't a career job. You're elected to serve the people that elected you, not to go in and do what you think is best, but to do what the people elected you to do. And people have forgotten about that. I look at organizations who don't have servant leadership but have the power model. They're going to go through the same cycles we go through, but I do believe those cycles are going to be more extensive than we'll see, because we're a better run organization. We have better reputations. We do more things. We give back to organizations. We give back to the community more than our counterparts do. So that's there. But if I went into an organization and asked one question of the employees, and that one question would be, do you trust your boss? Or better yet, do you trust management? And that isn't a high number, then you have major problems in your organization. And the people who don't believe in servant leadership are usually more power-led. And if they let that question be asked in their organization in a safe mode, they're going to be shocked at what their people say. And my guess is productivity's down, profits are down, cash is down, and they're struggling to get better. They're struggling to show that they can get better and get business. Those guys that don't believe numbers, who don't see it in trust factors, well, pick up any management book and any management guru around, Maxwell, anybody. I don't care who you pick up, Collins, Ken Blanchard, all these guys. They're all teaching servant leadership.
Yep.
All right. So if you subscribe to any one of those, they may not be calling it servant leadership, but that's what they're teaching.
Exactly.
So quit quit getting hung up on the name and go treat people with dignity and respect.
Exactly. Too many people getting hung up on the name.
Yep, exactly.
But wonderful. Well, Art, this has been fantastic. I hate to cut it short already, but we're just about out of time. Is there anything for people who want to follow up with you and the Servant Leadership Institute? Where's the best way for them to reach you?
Best way, you can go to our website, servantleadershipinstitute.com. Our phone number here in sunny San Diego is 855-754-5323. That's 855-754-5323. Call us anytime. We've got a little store set up with a bunch of books and pamphlets we'd love to share with you. We have an annual conference coming up in San Diego that we're going to have some pretty interesting names and do some pretty interesting things. The theme of it's going to be game changers. And we're going to change the game in management. We're going to change the game and how we deal with people. And we're really excited about what's going on there. So we'd love to hear from you. And as I tell most people I talk to, I will talk to anybody who will listen. All right? If you're not interested in listening, don't call. Okay.
Nice. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, the conference is in February, right?
Conference is in February this year in beautiful San Diego.
That's
We'll be
it.
in the hotel right next to Petco Park. We're going to be in Petco Park for dinner.
Nice.
Do a little team building in Petco Park.
Yeah.
And then give back to the homeless there downtown. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Yep.
So if you're in the Northeast, Midwest, anywhere cold, San Diego's a great place to be in February.
Come on down, bring a light jacket because that's all you're going to need.
Very
That's
nice.
it. Yep.
Very nice.
No shoes, no gloves, and you'll have a great time.
Well, thank you, Art. This has been wonderful, and thank you again for your time and for all you're doing to help advocate and advance servant leadership.
All right, Ben. Thank you again for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.